Welcome. This is Dr. John Jack Tiani, and I want to delve in further to demystify Excel, Microsoft Excel, and just spreadsheets in general. We're going to talk about just a few functions, few features that make Excel so powerful. These were questions that came up actually today in one of my classes. So there was a request to create a video for some of the things we did in class, and I'm just doing that in a few minutes here. The video will take no more than 10 minutes, I promise, and it will discuss some key features that everybody knows and loves to use, but sometimes need a refresher, might need a refresher. So here we go. So I'm going to direct your attention to Excel. Just open up Excel. By the way, you can try this as you're going through my video. I always recommend you pause my videos, training videos, and actually give the same functions or features a try to see if you understand what we're talking about and also have a chance to practice. So I want to cover just some very isolated and specific topics today that are really powerful or provide a powerful way of using Excel. First of all, functions. Specifically, I also want to focus on, after doing some generic examples on functions, I want to focus on the if function and then conditional formatting features, a very important concept called addressing, cell addressing. As we know, cell addressing comes in two different types in Excel, absolute and relative. We want to talk about the difference. We want to talk about when to use it and how it works and why you would use each in which situations. There's also a way to cut and paste that's different in Excel. For example, you can do a paste special where you can paste certain um, attributes, but not other attributes. For example, we'll talk about that. My favorite function in Excel by far, it's actually a pretty useless function by itself, but when you're trying to troubleshoot formulas, it's wonderful. It's the formula text function. And finally, some students of mine had questions about how Vlookups work, so we're going to touch on Vlookups, okay? So here we go. We're going to start from a blank sheet, okay? I'm going to just add a blank sheet here, make it sheet 3. And we're going to just create some data. So let's just create some data on people and age of those people. So we're going to make up some names. E, um, Dennis, uh, and uh, um, okay. So and let's see. Okay, so we have some just 10 people or so here. We're going to boldface this because it's a title just to make it look a little nicer. And then we're going to put some random ages here. Since I'm first on the list and I'm feeling really old today, I'm going to say that I'm feeling like I'm 90. Goofy's only 30. Minnie is only 18. And Mickey is 21. Janice is a little older, 40. Charlie might be 50. Kevin is 35. And that's um, 62. And Monica is 40, 50. Sunny is 20. Okay. So beautiful. We've got a few age groups, and I want to center these titles on second thought. So I'm just going to do a um, center formatting, and there you go. Okay, super. Now I want to add some function on. I want to just create some basic functions here to analyze this data. So I'm going to do first average of these people, their ages, and we're going to do median. We're going to do maximum age on my list, and then minimum age. Okay. then we're going to go right next to this, and we're going to type in the average function. Okay, and we can then select these cell values, close, and the average age of this list is 41.8. All right, and I want to do the same thing for median. I'm going to type in median. Okay, that. Oops, I messed up, so I'm going to undo. Go. And this is median is B2 to B6 is not correct. It is actually 11, right? So here we go. So that's 37. Then I want to do max of these ages. So that's going to give me probably 90, I believe. 90 is the biggest. And mini is 18. So that sounds like it's the lowest age on the list. But let's see what the function actually generates. Super. 18. Wonderful. So everybody hopefully understood how we got there. We just used the equal sign to start a function and then use the right function. If you don't know what the right function is and you're trying to achieve some mathematical operation, you can just go and click this f of x function arguments dialog, and it walks you through what you need to know. So that is basically how you do that. Now let's say I want to take these numbers and basically copy them, okay? And I want to paste them right over here on the side, okay? If I do that just by raw cut and paste, I will get an error. Why will I get an error? Because we are using cell references here that are relative, which means that when I copy this 6 columns over, it's looking for values in the I column and trying to look for what I is it has the column I has in those values. And of course, column I is largely blank, and so you get this undefined errors that you can see does not give you the desired results. All I wanted to do is save this and copy these values and put them here. So one of the ways I can do that is, first of all, I can delete that. I can go in here and I can do a copy just like I did before. But when I do a paste, I have a menu, and this is what I call paste special, right? You can go to paste special and it gives you different things you can do. If you just do a normal paste, it copies and pastes, or rather pastes everything about that cell, including values, formats, any comments or notes. Remember, these cells have other attributes to them besides what you see. So if I don't want to copy the formula and I just want to copy values, I can just select value. And it will literally copy these. And I want to, oops, I don't want to do that there. What did I do that for? So let me just do this again. Copy. And then I put my cursor right here and I do a paste special. And I can just do values. Bang, right? There you have it. Okay. Now, if anything happens to these cells, like if I put a 0 there, nothing will happen to these values because they are not using these anymore. They just did a cut and I did only a paste on the values itself. No matter what happens to these cells, and if these values change, nothing happens to this set of data that I just pasted. Okay, now let's say I want to do this a slightly different way. So right now I'm using relative addressing, right, which is the basic form of referencing cells. But if I, oops, go here and I type in an F4, or I can manually type in these dollar signs. If I do that, oops, all right, function F4. If I type in a function F4 on these, okay? Or I can physically go and type these dollar signs in between the column and the rows. This basically says that I want to use these cell references as an absolute value, which means it does not change no matter where I cut and paste and how I configure these cells. If I do an escape, a enter on that, the average doesn't change. We're still averaging this, right? But now I can take this value and paste it anywhere. Let's say I paste it here, and I still get my 41.8 because it's simply freezing these values. If I go and check the formula on this, it still has my dollar signs. It still has the B2 to B11, and so I'm using this data even if this operation is all the way over here, right? So that is exactly how we use cell referencing in a different way. You can use um, um, absolute, or you can use relative addressing depending on what you're trying to achieve. Now, there's an interesting function called formula text. All that does is it takes an argument, takes a cell, and displays the formula into the cell that you put the formula text function in. So because I had the dollar signs in here, and this is what my actual formula is, right here when I use the formula text, I get actual formula right from here. Now I can copy this and paste it. Remember, it's relative addressing, so this formula has relative addressing, B13, right? When I paste it down here, it just takes B14, then it takes B15, then it takes B16. You can see that. So it's doing what I'm desiring it to do. What would happen if I took the formula text that I originally added? Let's get rid of this, okay? If I took the formula text that I originally added and actually put the dollar signs in, right? Function F4 does it automatically. You can also type them in. Well, nothing happens here because it uses the same B2, B11. But if I copy this cell and I paste it down here, what do you think will happen? Well, let's try. You're going to get the same value because it freezes the B2 to B11. I'm sorry, it freezes the average because that was what the formula is here. And so when I put formula text here, it's only looking at B13 again. See, this is looking at B13, this is looking at B13, this is looking at B13, this is looking at B13. That's not really what I wanted here, right? I wanted to actually see what these formulas were here, the median, min, and max, right? And so therefore, I don't want this in this particular use case. I want to actually just do relative addressing here like this. I can just highlight this and click function F4 again. It takes away the absolute signs and puts it back to relative. And then I can do a copy paste here again. And this is just a simple copy paste and it shows me the formulas. All right. So I just showed you how to do a few things. I showed you how to do functions. These were 4 functions that we used. We learned special paste, okay, or paste special. We learned a little bit about absolute and relative addressing, right? Let's learn a little bit about the if function and conditional formatting. Oh, wait, we also learned about formula text, right? So let's learn about the if function, the conditional formatting, and the lookups to complete this training module. Okay, so go back to our data. Let's talk about the if function, for example. Let's just say that I want to create a column here that says if people are young, no, if people are young or old. And let's say I define young as anybody less than 35, right? And let's say I define older as anybody 35 and over, right? So I will take this cell here and put a oh, sorry, not this cell. I will go to the heading cell that I just created. Um, this wasn't the right sheet. 1 second. Right here. This is my sheet. I'm going to do young or old, right? Column. And I want to highlight young or old here, right? So I'm going to do if the age of this person is uh, less than or equal to 35. Okay, that's we just set that arbitrarily. Then I want to say, and if it's true, if the condition is true, so the if statement says logical test first, comma, what do you return if the value is true, comma, what happens if you return if the value is false of the test, right? So we're testing for B2 being less than or equal to 35. If somebody's less than or equal to 35 years of age, we want to return young, okay? If not, right, obviously they are older. They're over 35, so we want to return old. Let's call it older. Old doesn't sound nice, especially since I'm in that category. So if I hit enter, you can see that John here is uh, older, right? Is basically coming out to be older, right? And since I use relative addressing, I did not freeze this B2, right? I can just copy and paste for all the folks here, and it will automatically calculate or conditionally assign whether they're older or young, right? Based on the rule that we set. And so I have a very easy way of using identifying people older or younger by using the if statement. Okay, very simple. Okay. Now, let's say we want to do, that's how you use the if statement in a basic sense, right? If I want to do some conditional formatting, there's a feature here called conditional formatting. And let's say I want to have everybody that's older highlighted as yes here, or sorry, as red. So I go to conditional formatting, I select this, okay? And I go to conditional formatting and I do a highlight cell rules, right? So actually, I want to say equal to, right? So if it's equal to older, I want to highlight it in red. So if these format the cells that are equal to uh, um, older, right? And fill it with light red, fill with dark red texture. You can do whatever you want here, right? So I can say, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It can do, let's say we could do yellow, right? If we click that, we have conditional formatting in operation here, which basically automatically does some formatting to these cells based on the value in the cell or some sort of value. And there's different options there. You've got um, top and bottom rules, meaning give me the top 10%, give me the top 15%, highlighted in a certain way, etc. I just showed you basic cell highlighting using the equal to feature, which says it's equal to the value of the cell is equal to older, so highlighted in yellow, for example. There you have it. Okay, so that's conditional formatting. So we've shown you the if function, we've shown you conditional formatting. I want to show you now the lookups, okay? So let's go back to our sheet. So what's a VLOOKUP? Well, let's say I know nothing about VLOOKUPs, right? I'm going to go to my function here, and I'm going to search for VLOOKUP. Right? And you'll find that there's a function called VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP stands for vertical lookup. It looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. By default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. Okay. So because we did this conditional formatting in this way, there's another way we could have done conditional formatting. Okay. For example, we can set a small table here. Okay. And say if somebody is say, for example, if it's 10, somebody's 10 years old, somebody's 20 years old, somebody's 30 years old, somebody's 40 years old, somebody's 50 years old, somebody's 60 years old, somebody's 70 years old, 80 years old, somebody's 90 years old, and let's say hundreds, right? I'm just going to create a sample lookup table, okay? Right here on the bottom, right? Call it a lookup table, okay? And let's say if somebody's under age 10, and I want to say he's under 10. Then somebody is under 20. It's under, well, let's say it's, I want to say the teenagers, teens, okay? 30s, if somebody is 30 or below, but higher than 20, they're in their 20s, right? Then these would be in the 30s. You'll see what I'm doing with this, right? 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 9, right? So what this is saying is I want to create a table and I want to look this up using this data, right, from the people data set that I have. And if somebody's under 10, I want to label them as under 10. If somebody's between 10 and 20, I want to label them as teens. If somebody's between 20 and 30, I want to label them in their 20s. If somebody's between 30 and 40, I want to label them in their 30s, and so on, right? What I can simply do here is I can create a lookup, okay? So age group, for example, and I can say Vlookup, open paren, lookup value. What am I looking up? Well, I am looking up this value, right? And where am I looking it up? I need a table array. Well, this is my table array. Great. Then, what column index do I need? Well, the column index means when I find B2 in the leftmost column, remember it was the leftmost column, I want to take what's in the second column. So this would be the second column of the table, right? And I just hit press 2 here, okay? The range lookup is optional, so I'm just going to close this parentheses. See what happens. Look at what's happening here, right? It says that this person, okay, well, let me just put this in bold. You can see it. This person is in the 80s. Well, what happened here? We are actually off by 1, right? This is taking 90 and calling it 80s, right? Because we intentionally made a mistake just to see what happens, right? So we're showing 80s because it's really anything over this and below this. That's how that works, right? So if we just take this, cut and paste it, and rechange it. So anything in the 10 to 20s is teens, then it's 20s, and it's 30s, and then this is saying, okay, hundreds, right? God bless them if they're in their hundreds. That's awesome, right? So there you have it, right? Now this is showing up automatically as 90s because it's referencing the same table. Now if we just copy and paste this, what's happening? Well, we have the same problem with relative and absolute addressing, right? Why? Because if we look at this VLOOKUP, it's B2 to A19 to B28, which is the table array. This was the table array, right? And then we're taking the second column. Everything is right. But if we go, because we copied this as is, it's shifting the table array from 20 to 29. Or like it's, if you can just follow what's happening here. We want this first thing to shift, right? We want the B4 to be incrementing by 1 every time because it's looking at the different age groups here. But we don't want the table array to be fluctuating as we copy. So what we need to do is make the table array, leave the lookup value relative, but change the table array to absolute. And I'll do that by function F4, automatically puts dollar signs in front of the rows and the columns. Remember, you don't have to do rows and columns. It's what you need to do is important. You can just freeze on columns, you can freeze on rows, or you can do both. To freeze that table that I just created. And so that's why I'm going to use absolute addressing here. And then when I hit enter, nothing changes on the first one because it's the same thing. But then I can do a copy. I can do a simple paste here. And we should see the correct values, right? We should have seen 90s, 30s, because this guy's in the 30s, Goofy, and this is in the teens, 20s. You can see it's correct delineation, what I intended, right? So our VLOOKUP is working. We actually made a few errors here purposely to see the results. You saw what happened when I didn't have the table correct. You saw what happened when I didn't have absolute and relative correct. And we fix it. And this happens all the time in the real world. We don't exactly anticipate what we need until we try. We see the results don't work out to the way we want, so we make adjustments. And also on the VLOOKUPs, there's some optional features. You can go through them. I just showed you a basic VLOOKUP. I showed you a basic conditional formatting scenario. Obviously, there's more to it, and you can learn more by looking at the help and looking at the other options that those functions give you, right? So let's review again what we did here. We did a bunch of things. We showed you how functions work. We showed you how if function works and specifically what the results are and how you code the if function. We showed you conditional formatting by doing the special highlighting based on the age. We showed you the difference between absolute versus relative addressing. We showed you the differences between how you paste things when you copy them. You can paste values, you can paste formats, you can paste formulas, or you can exclude some of those features depending on what your needs are. My favorite function, formula text, exposes the formulas in cells and makes it shows you what those formulas are without you having to click on those cells. And finally, we did a basic VLOOKUP example. Okay, so that, my dear friends, is a little bit of these features and functions that are really powerful, demystified for you. I hope this has been a good learning. I encourage you to re-look at this video or re-watch this video by doing a pause at the right places and actually trying these exercises for yourself. I hope this has been helpful. I trust that it has. So thank you very much for following along, and I appreciate it. Over and out.